Don't be afraid of using AI, but understand that there is a responsible and a safe way to use it. There is a risk associated with everything you're doing, and so be intentional about what you're doing in AI.
Yeah, as the kids say, be a little sus. Think about some of the ramifications of putting certain pieces of data in or asking it certain questions or whatever the case may be. You do also have to have accountability and responsibility in what you're using it for as well. This is exciting. It's also
potentially dangerous.
Very potentially.
No cap.
Welcome to Threat Vector, the Palo Alto Network's podcast where we discuss pressing cybersecurity threats and resilience and uncover insights into the latest industry trends. I'm your host, David Moulton, Director of Thought Leadership for Unit 42. Today I'm speaking with Chris DeBrenner, Vice President of Security Operations at CBTS, where he leads teams focused on helping customers protect themselves and reduce risk through managed services, strategic security operations, and automation. Chris brings over 14 years of experience at CBTS with deep expertise in product strategy, compliance, and service delivery. I'm also joined by Ryan Hamrick, Manager of Security Consulting Services and co-host of the No More Secrets Security podcast. Ryan brings more than 2 decades of experience in offensive security, incident response, and malware analysis. At CBTS, he leads red team operations and professional services, helping organizations test their defenses by thinking and acting like an attacker. Today, we're going to talk about AI-driven security, what it means for user experience, how organizations can balance risk and usability, and what guardrails are necessary to implement these technologies responsibly. We'll also dig into the ethics of AI, emerging governance structures, and how red teaming AI tools might be the next big thing in offensive security testing. Chris and Ryan, welcome to Threat Vector. I am so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Excited about it.
Chris, I'll start with you. Can you give me a quick snapshot of your role at CBTS and maybe something that people would be surprised is on your remit?
Sure. My name's Chris DeBrenner. I work at CBTS. I'm the Vice President of Security Operations, and my purview is helping our customers protect themselves and reduce their risk.
How about you, Ryan? Can you give us a snapshot of a usual day and your remit?
Sure, yeah. Ryan Hamrick, I manage the Security Consulting Services Group and Professional Services team here at CBTS, and my team does red team offensive operations. And it's really fun for us to be able to go into customers' networks and find things as the good, bad guys for them and be able to tell them exactly how we did those things.
All right, let's get into security topics for a little bit here anyway. How can organizations balance between implementing AI-driven security measures and maintaining a seamless user experience?
So AI for AI, right? So what we're trying to do, obviously, is use that to its advantage, right? It would enhance the behavioral anomalies that we currently are using in tools, like Palo Alto today. It can enhance the response by feeding it protocols, playbooks, remediation actions. It helps us to dynamically keep things more protected. And obviously, from a user experience perspective, it would improve that dramatically. You would see efficiencies, I would think, almost immediately, starting in the 20% range or even higher as things mature, for sure.
Yeah, and you kind of get that input of conversational chatbots in us from a security perspective too. We're starting to see some of that, and we're starting to think about how to implement that in our organization. How can an end user go and have a conversation with a security tool, quote unquote,
right,
to find out, why is this bad? Why can't I get approval for this? Can I get approval for this? That sort of thing. That interaction, I think, is going to be pretty nice.
So, Ryan, I think you were talking about it a little bit, but can you give us a specific example where AI has successfully enhanced security without compromising usability?
Sure. Well, one of our use cases is, and this isn't necessarily like right away threat in your face kind of situation, but we are building an internal AI chatbot that allows people to query our security policies. So what is our corporate policy for AI, usable AI. What are the AI tools we're allowed to use? They can query that AI chatbot and get that answer back. One of the things we come across often is we just don't know as a user where to find our security corporate policies, what is in those policies, and those sorts of answers are going to be more readily available to end users.
Yeah, and even from an integration, automation, and obviously user experience, like we're talking about, we're starting to dip our toe into some other technologies as well to enhance our response, our process automation, take the simple tasks, if you will, of correlation and pulling things and running queries, and then handing those to the analyst so they have all the information that they need right in front of them as accurately as possible, and then being able to take that obviously from multiple data sources, looking for the needle in the haystack in a lot of cases.
As you're talking about that, it seems like there's two forms. There's the AI that allows somebody to do more, and then there's AI that does more for you before you even know about it. And I like this idea of AI enhancing the user experience. A former designer, by the way, spent about 20 years designing software. And a lot of times, to me, the best design is one that you don't even notice it's happening.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of your way. And if you're thinking, wow, that was really delightful, I think it's cute one or two times. And then after that, you're over it. You don't want to see the animation. You don't want to see the, the build of how the page comes together, whatever it is that you were doing in design. And I think the same is true with AI, where you're going, get out of my way and make this task that I'm working on simpler and easier. Have you seen it go the other way, though, where you're seeing examples where the UX is made worse by the AI? And what should we do about that? Because it seems to me that things that are hard to use are going to be things that people avoid, even if they're more secure.
Yes. And so I did want to touch on the design concept. So I guess my idea for an AI-enhanced revitalization of Clippy would be a bad idea for some of the older listeners in the crowd.
I always thought Clippy was like the awesome little joke that only certain people know about, because I brought it up and I'm like, well, I've got a case of the olds.
Clippy was ahead of its time.
I like Clippy and stay off my lawn is probably the two phrases that should go together. Yeah, so it can absolutely get in the way of a user experience. Bad design choices make bad user experiences. And if you've got an AI interface where the prompting is so difficult to figure out the right way to get the right answer, that's a bad user experience. So that's both a design choice and an architecture choice that causes a problem to the user experience.
Yep, I agree with you. Right. I personally have not run into, I would say AI that makes the experience worse, but that's just me personally.
I've come across frustrations where I know kind of what I want to get out of it, but I'm struggling to put the right words together in the right way to get the right thing out of the AI.
It's not a security solution, but if you try to make AI image generators give you a person that is left-handed, you can't do it. Right. The training model is there. And it seems to me that there are going to be some of those same frustrations within AI-driven tools in security, where we ask, we prompt, we push, and without some sort of normalized data, it's because it's coming from different sources, you're going to run into issues where what you're putting together doesn't talk to each other right, and then the outputs seem a couple degrees off, and then that's frustrating, and you want to move away from the tool that could be powerful, but the UX is just it makes you think, oh man, this is as bad as Clippy.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that where disparate data sources give a poor experience. We have seen that obviously with some of the early dealings and things that we've been doing here at CBTS. Having multiple data sources or things not in the right place does yield a poor experience initially, for sure.
Yeah, like if I've got an event that I want to respond to, and the remediation for that event is fixing a registry entry, AI tool will give me the output of the GPO command or WMI command that I'm going to run to fix that registry entry across the organization, and it's not exactly right. Or it's so far away that we have to do a lot of revision on it anyway, to fix it. So I have to be knowledgeable enough to know that it's wrong and know that how to fix it, despite the fact I'm sort of depending on this AI tool at that point to do that work for me.
Oh, so how important is it to have AI normalize the data from multiple sources on the back end?
Very important, as long as you can tell it which one sources, or give it a metric on how trusted each source is, I think.
Yeah.
Like this source, yeah, it's Wikipedia. Great. Thank you. I trust it 50%. But this source is ExploitDB, and I'm going to trust that 90%.
Right.
I'm not saying those numbers are accurate in any way, shape, or form, but that sort of lever in the back end would be very helpful for me to trust the output that it has.
So, with the increasing complexity of AI-driven security systems, how do we effectively educate users without overwhelming them?
I think it goes direct to training. I would treat it just like security awareness training. We try to be creative. You can have videos, but also maybe an interactive training would be very, very helpful. It would take maybe the scariness of it, but it would could also use that to enhance your AI to a certain extent. If you were using AI to train the user base to help in its effectiveness for an organization.
I think there's also an opportunity for training enhanced by using it. So let's talk about this concept. We're going to train you on this concept, whether it's a self-driven training or a video. Now you go and do the thing that we said you could do with the system. You see how it works. And that's sort of like training backed up by actual use of the system will help build that trust, I think.
Agreed.
Familiarity.
Yeah, it's just using it, getting familiar.
Yeah.
That would definitely help.
Yeah. A lifetime ago, I was with Salesforce, and I went through the training and then went through the trailhead, and you had to actually build on the platform to pass the training. And the academic exercise of reading and looking at the pictures or watching the videos versus actually going into the system and building it, worlds apart. But at the end, I had that level of confidence that I could get Salesforce to do what I wanted. And I think what you're talking about really makes some sense, where it's not just abstracted out to, did you read or watch this video as quickly as possible and then answer 2 questions and move on?
Right. Yeah, that more practical application of the concepts you just learned has always worked better for me personally, and I know it works better for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
So you've talked about the guardrails a little bit. Do you see any governance structures that need to be in place to ensure that ethical use of AI in security?
Yeah, so Chris touched on like the auditing the use. You have to go back and check. You do want to come up with rules, and those rules should be a written security policy that's put into place over the ethical use of AI. Here are our company policies for ethical use of AI. If you violate these, we find out about it, something's going to happen bad probably to you. But you can also programmatically put those guardrails in place up front. There's tons of different AI models you can grab out there, some without guardrails, some with way too many guardrails. Maybe we'll get to that later, but you really have to define what that means for you as an organization and write it down, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Put it down somewhere some people can read it.
Yep, for sure. And we did talk about oversight committees. The other thing is making sure you have a good, diverse group of stakeholders.
Yes.
That would also absolutely ensure that those structures, that governance is in place.
Don't just feed it Urban Dictionary.
That'd be a bad idea.
That'd be a bad idea. Give it some good sources.
I think the guardrail would be don't even entertain or block that.
Yeah, stop. But how do we make sure it keeps up with things like Skibidi and Riz?
That's a great question.
We'll work on that.
I mean,
get back to you.
It sounds like this is a lot of time and resources in the prep work. Have you seen that in the projects that you're leading?
I have seen that in projects that I'm involved in internally. Yeah, for sure. A lot of upfront thinking about what data do we want to allow people to have access to? What constraints are we going to put on the model, and what things are we going to feed into the model to make sure it doesn't go too crazy? But I have also seen the reverse in models that are out there where they don't do any of that, and the model gets weird real fast.
Yeah, I wasn't part of those discussions, but I can't even imagine having the first stakeholder meeting that you guys had in that, right? That I'm sure a light went off and said, "Oh man, we have to." The first of all, the possibilities are endless, and then how do you ensure good ethical responses? How do you ensure accurate responses? That would be. I would have loved to have been in the room when you guys went through that process.
Luckily, it wasn't. It's with a very good group of very reasonable people.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
we didn't really have to be specific about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We weren't like, make sure you don't say this word in the LLM. We weren't that specific about it.
I did want to ask you guys, have you come across Noelle Russell ever
No.
in your
I have not, no.
networking or? So she's the CEO at the AI Leadership Institute, and I want to ask you guys a question about it. But I wanted to give you a little bit of context on where that's coming from. So about a year ago, Noelle Russell came and spoke at one of our events, and one of the concepts she raised was a need for a AI red team to go in and really see how far they could push the AI tool, no matter its business application. Is that type of team something that you've seen some success with?
We have created an offering for customers to do that sort of thing for their situation. So they stand up an LLM, Copilot, Gemini, whatever it is, Hugging Face model that they put out there. We haven't come up with an offering, and we came up with it, at least the bare bones concepts of it about a year ago. So the timing is pretty auspicious to do that very thing. Okay, great. You've got an LLM. You've defined your rules. You've got it set up. Now we're going to come in. We're going to go through the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, because there is an OWASP top 10 for LLMs. Here are the top 10 vulnerabilities we're going to test for. Prompt injection, the data misuse. So us coming in as acting bad guys, trying to mess with your LLM solution. Yep. We see value in that. We haven't had a lot of customers latch on to that yet.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that's coming.
Yeah, we definitely have customers that are still trying to imagine the possibilities and what can we do and how do we get set up and what are the things we should be thinking about. But yeah, Ryan and his team, they put together an offering months and months ago, and I'm sure you've tested out on our internal stuff. And
Yes.
how'd that go?
Pretty. I mean, we use internally mostly Copilot,
Right.
And that is a pretty good model. It works pretty well. Really, what we're testing for in there is overexposure of data.
Mhm.
I should not know everybody's salary in the company. Can I find that information in our LLM by tricking it to try and tell me that? Copilot does a good job of keeping the model up to date and fighting against those sort of injection attacks or data misuse. So not a lot of success yet, but we're still there. We're still testing it. I like the concept better. Sure, we'll go and do your Copilot, but I like the concept better where they've set up a model that they either train themselves or downloaded from Hugging Face, and they're applying it for us to come in and do that, because there'll be a lot less good configurations in that, more opportunities to break it.
Ryan, you were just mentioning salary data that you shouldn't have access to. And it makes me think about data privacy in general. How is AI influencing data privacy practices? And do you see any challenges back to that idea of usability?
I think we're having a lot more conversations internally and with customers now about data classification and proper controls than we ever have, because they understand that if they're going to stand up Copilot on their 365 instance, it's going to chew up all the data that's in 365 if you let it, and you should. But that data may not be properly secured. You may not have done the right role-based access controls because you need 50 people in your company to have access to this file. So you just say, let everybody have access to it. So we are starting to have a lot more of those conversations. And I think it's a very critical thing to think about in your risk conversation about, should we deploy AI? What data are we going to feed into it? What controls do we have around it already? Are they effective? Because if they aren't, we're going to expose data.
Right. Data is so important. I mean, if you look at all the GDPR, all the regulations and compliance throughout the globe, that is the thing that for me scares me the most.
Yep.
when dealing with AI and making sure those controls are there and ensuring data minimization. Is that a word?
Minimization.
Data minimization.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll call it. Coined it right here. Now, my example was around Copilot. We haven't even touched on the use of external AI sources, external to a company, where you're feeding it in maybe even proprietary company data that goes into the model. And so we have made decisions internally. Here are the acceptable AI solutions. We block the access to everything else because we want to be able to control that. We recommend that to other companies as well. Make specific decisions about what AI tools you want to allow in your environment, and make sure that you block access to anything else through whatever means necessary. We do it using Global Protect, honestly, to disallow access to the domain, the URLs, for those sorts of things, or the categorization of those things. But, the exposure is, I have 2 sales documents with lots of financial data in them. I'm going to upload them to ChatGPT, give me a comparison of these 2 files, tell me the good and the bad, and give it to me in a table output. You can do that. But that data then goes into the model for someone to come back later and say, what is CBTS's latest financial models? And it comes right back out to whoever has access to that model.
So I'm going to date myself and flip this around just a little bit. There was a time when getting music was hard legally, but easy illegally.
Yes.
There was a website. And then Apple came along and they said, hey, we made it pretty easy to get legal music. And the UX of that experience was so simple and clean, and I didn't have to worry about the download actually being something I didn't expect. And I think others found that to be true, right? Like, we followed where it's easy. When you talk about a disallow list for AI tools, that makes a lot of sense. There's some places, some alleyways we should not visit, right?
Yep.
But you were talking about a chat tool earlier that said these are the tools that are allowed. And I sometimes think it's easier to lead people to where they can go than to frustrate them and block them. What's the balance that you strike between a disallow list and an education of, here's where you go for legal downloads, except it's AI tools?
Yeah. I mean, in security, we try to tell people we are an enablement group, and we aren't trying to disable you from doing your job. We want to enable you to use the best tools in the safest way possible. And so we have a block list. We basically, the way we do it is we have acceptable AI tools, and anything else is outside of that. So the messaging we can put out there is, here are the ones we can use. Here are the ones that we encourage you to use. Here's training on how to use those particular tools. Like we mentioned earlier, training them will help them trust the tool a little bit more. We use Copilot internally. Great. But do people know how to use it? If they don't know how to use it, they're going to go to the one that is the easiest to use. Like you mentioned, Apple came out with this great interface. It was easy to use, and so people went to that. It was easier than those other tools that we probably shouldn't name, that we maybe all used before.
Yeah, we all know what we're talking about. But
yeah, we sure do.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, to Ryan's point, right? We want to enable people. We try to give proper guardrails, and then we also try to put the proper exception processes or approval processes in to hopefully enhance, so we don't slow things down too much, or we were able to help our constituencies perform the work that they need to perform.
Yeah, let's use a specific use case, DeepSeek. So DeepSeek came out, hit the market hot here in the United States not too long ago. We don't know enough about it right now to say, yes, you can use it. Now, I have a specific opinion on that we should not use it. There's reasons for that. We can get to that later, maybe. But
Yeah, we released research on it as well, and
Yeah.
I don't think we would recommend it
Right.
from Unit 42's point of view.
correct. I would agree with that research. However, people may ask about it, and we want to make sure that we have the right conversation with them. And it isn't like, no, you can't use it because it's bad. It is more like, we're doing the research on it. Here's what we found out. Here's what Unit 42 has put out about it. Here's what this other company has put out about it. Here's our own research about it. Here's why. I think the why is really the best way to get that message out to our organization, because rather than just saying no, but why?
100%. That's every reason we give a why.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
So, guys, I want to shift gears a little bit, talking about AI and threat detection. How is AI changing the landscape of threat detection, and what do you think the implications are for the end users?
I mean, from my perspective, it's efficiency, it's time, it's real time, it's the potential for identifying patterns that are indicative to new threats that are, we're just learning about within potentially minutes or hours through the various feeds, and being able to hand the analyst that information right out of the gate in much quicker fashion instead of days. It's now minutes is pretty much a game changer. And by doing that, obviously, you have a chance for preventing breaches sooner rather than later. And then when you start really getting into the auto remediation of those things, it's pretty exciting, quite honestly. That AI and has the potential to really help us find those needles in the haystack for each one of our customers that we provide services to. And so, that's what I'm super excited. That's where we're driving towards. That's where we want to be.
And as much as automation helps in threat detection, having AI bolster your automation processes
Mhm.
is also going to help a lot with the speed of threat detection
Right.
for new threats, because there's hundreds of new threats a day.
Yeah, for sure. And it gives us higher confidence,
Yep.
right? Less, we'll be able to sniff out the false positives, benign positives, and really get to the things that we need to really worry about much, much faster.
So, you've talked about this idea of blending together AI and automation, right? It's the cookies and cream of technology right now.
Yeah.
But as these systems become more autonomous in their decision making, how do you make sure that users maintain that appropriate control over the security settings?
We have to follow Asimov's 3 rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's iRobot that came
Yeah.
to mind. Am I allowed to say that?
I'll allow it. And I have no authority here, but I'll allow it. So that's where watching for bias in the model and shift in the model becomes pretty important. You have to continue your capabilities to see a false positive for what it is as a human continues to be a valuable part of that whole feedback process. Now, you may have 1,000 false positives that the AI system takes care of for you, but you still want to go back and check and make sure that the model is doing what it needs to do. It's spot checking. You shouldn't trust an AI solution to go back and check the efficacy of the AI solution you have in place. For efficiency's sake, you still need to go back through manually and do that stuff. But that's where you look at the bias of the model and continue to make sure it's being fair and trustworthy and all of those fun metrics that are now part of our lives.
Can you talk about the potential consequences for over-reliance on AI for security decisions?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things we actually talked about, Chris and I were just kind of sitting chatting about this, I think yesterday, is we're going to start to see a generation of folks coming into IT that started with AI. as enablement tools, and AI tools that can generate code for you that you put into production, that you run on your systems, and you do these things. Hopefully they have the wherewithal and they get the training to be able to interpret the code that AI is generating for them, to be able to make sure that it is right and effective and not even accidentally malicious. But I'm worried about that.
Yeah. Then we talk about the guardrails and exception handling and making sure that things are properly vetted before you move right. Yeah, it is something that does make us think and worry a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not just going to be from a coding perspective. You can quickly extrapolate into other, not just IT areas, but you could quickly look into healthcare and financial and other verticals, government, military.
Any decision-making point
Right.
driven by AI is going to have to be vetted until it's ultimately bulletproof.
Right. So we talked about crawl, walk, run. We
Right.
really need to crawl for a really long time, I think, to really make sure that this is safe.
And that crawl is going to be difficult when we get to the point of more ubiquitous quantum computing.
Right. And then that's a whole nother
It's a whole,
nother show.
maybe a whole nother episode. I don't know.
I was going to say, we only got one episode planned for today, but maybe we'll have to come back on that. So let's look ahead a little bit. How do you envision the relationship between security and usability evolving with the advancements in AI or some of these other technologies?
I think it's still kind of, it's not a different conversation than we're having today with end users. But the difference between security and availability, right? It always seems like it's a struggle between us being able to patch systems versus them needing to have 1,000, 3,000 days of uptime, which is, don't do that. Thank you. That's my soapbox. Thank you for coming to my very short TED Talk. So I think it's the same conversation. It's around, we want to make sure it's usable and as invisible as the security controls around it are, as invisible as possible to you as the end user, but you have to understand that we have to put some controls around it. Now, everything we do is to make sure to enable you to use the tool. And we're here to help address the risks that maybe we understand and maybe you as the end user don't. But at some point, you do have to trust us. And more than happy to take feedback. More than happy to hear you put this control in place and it has made the platform unusable for me because of this use case that I have. Let's figure out how to make that work. It's a back and forth conversation about how do we balance those two things. But I don't think it's significantly different than the conversations we have today around system availability and security.
Right, I agree. It's still the CIA triad there. I agree with everything you said there, Hammer.
Thank you. That's why we work so well together, because you just agree with whatever I say.
That's correct.
Perfect.
Chris and Ryan, thanks for an awesome conversation today. I really appreciate you sharing your insights on AI systems, some of the things that are exciting in security, some of the things that are dangerous about these tools. It gives me optimism that smart guys like yourselves are thinking about this and keeping your clients, our clients, very safe.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us.
That's it for today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe wherever you listen. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Your feedback really does help me understand what you want to hear about. And if you want to reach out to me directly about the show, email me at threatvector@paloaltonetworks.com. I want to thank Michael Heller, our executive producer, our content and production teams, which include Kenny Miller, Joe Benacourt, and Virginia Tran. Elliot Peltzman edits the show and mixes the audio. We'll be back next week. Until then, stay secure, stay vigilant. Goodbye for now.